All right, we're beginning to paint with some broader strokes now in this project as we get near the end of our front end design and everything else. And what we want to do now is actually have a look at syncing our current state up to the cloud versions of our project. So at this point, we have actually quite a few changes that are being done. This is typically you'd want to kind of scope these into some smaller pieces. But what we want to do now is actually have a look at a functionality with the Hasura metadata that will allow us to condense a number of our migration statements into a single migration folder, because you'll see now that we'd have to replay all of these migrations that we've been doing along the way. And what we would like to do instead is actually go ahead and group these all into a single statement, because these are all a bunch of local changes, and that really is not going to be helpful for us wanting to deploy these. So we're going to use a migration utility here. So the syntax for running these squashing migrations is we're going to go ahead and do I'm going to actually try to do a couple of unique ones here. So you can see I did all these pizza toppings. I want to go ahead and actually squash all of the pizza toppings into their own migration here. So that way we can kind of group them a bit more logically. So it's going to be Hasura, and we're going to actually just replicate, we're going to borrow our admin secret here. The command here is not console, so it's going to be Hasura, and we need the admin secret because we're interacting with the console. So we're going to say Hasura migrate squash, and then I want to give it a name, and we're just going to go ahead and call this pizza toppings. And then we're going to say from, and we're going to provide the start of the migrations we want to actually work with. So I want to do 16567. I'm going to just snag this. Snag this version number here. So we're going to say we're going from this version, and by default it'll go all the way up to the latest, but what I want to do is actually specify the last of the insert public pizzas here. So we're going to go ahead and grab this one now, and I'm just renaming it so that I can actually grab the number on it. So we got that now, and I'm going to go ahead and say that's my 2. So from here, what I'm doing is Hasura migrate squash. I'm giving it the name pizza toppings, and it is from the beginning migration here all the way down to this end migration here. And that will allow us to be able, or this one here, and that will go ahead and squash all of these into one migration statement. So you can see that it went ahead and condensed those all down into a nice clean pizza toppings migration. It is saying that we can see that it's created a archive for us that we now have the option to delete. We're going to go ahead and say yes. And so now we have all of those migrations cleanly stacked together, and all those statements are inside of one up statement and one down statement. That's going to be really helpful, especially if you are pushing a lot of changes that your team maybe you're kind of wondering, what did you all do? Because you're pushing too many things. No, don't do it this way, but the migrations help to be able to condense things together. What we want to do now is go ahead and make all of our changes here to the public table here. So we had this some friends work here. So what we're going to do is go ahead and again grab our statements. We're going to just repeat the same mechanism here, and I'm going to call this one friends. And again, this really saves us time with our CI/CD process, because these migrations don't have to be individually applied. I'm not going to have to stack so many of these. So now I'm going to go ahead and call this friend work, and we're going to go ahead and modify our from and our to. So this is our from statement, and our to statement will be this is the end of our friend work here. And with that, we can go ahead and apply these migrations, or squash these migrations. Again, on default, we've gone ahead, you can see that friend work is now condensed, and we like that, so we're going to go ahead and delete that, that source file. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and have a check at the last bit of work is actually some work done in the pizza folder. We're going to do the same thing one more time here, but what we're going to do now is we're just going to go ahead and call this the pizza work. And what we'll do is utilize the up to the latest version here. So we'll go ahead and call this pizza work. And I'm going to see if I can just manually type that naming convention here. So we have 165.9649. No, we're just gonna do like this again. This is not a lot of effort to make sure that we're not getting ourselves in a bad day. So we're going to go ahead and paste this in now. But what I'll do is I'll now delete all of the to statement here because I don't need any of this. So this is just going to literally take it all the way to the very last statement. And when I go ahead and hit default, we've now gone ahead and squashed all of that into a much cleaner set of migration statements now. So this migration is going to really be a lot snappier and easier for us to go ahead and apply. And speaking of applying, that is the next step now. So we're going to go ahead and push these changes up to verify that our login behavior actually works in a production environment. So we're going to go ahead and say git add all of our changes here. Let's go ahead and type in all correctly. Git commit m, we'll say latest. Ooh, we want to actually back up one real quick here. We're inside of the Hasura folder. All right. Git add all, git commit m, we'll say status check, and we'll go ahead and say git push. Now, you'll recall that we switched our Hasura Cloud project into manual deploy mode. So we're going to go ahead and trigger that deploy now. We can see status check is the one that it would reference. We'll go ahead and let that create a deploy now. And then we're going to go over and check on our Vercel status here to see how our status check build is coming. And we're getting a number of TypeScript errors. Let's go ahead and see what we can do to mitigate those while the cloud is building. So we're going to head back over to our project. And we're going to attempt to go inside of www, and we're going to run ourselves a yarn build to see which type errors we're getting at the moment. So we've got some errors on this dashboard file, and it is complaining about line 40. And that build is working. So we can go ahead and add all of these. And we'll push those changes up to the cloud. Okay, so now if we head back over to our Vercel project, we should see that we're not going to get that crashing build. Let's check on our deployment. We're now parsing those migrations. And we'll see I have a log for a failed deployment because the data that I have inside of my live version is inconsistent with my friends object locally. To do that, I'm going to actually just manually patch these. I'm going to go to my console here. I'm going to go to data. Now manually override this these data sets here. We're just going to remove all three of these because they have null violations. Okay, let's reapply those. Let's redeploy that. In the meantime, we can see that our Vercel project has deployed. Now, if we click on this, this is a stale preview here. If we click on this, we're going to see probably a failed fetch because we have now inconsistent data. We'll need to have cloud become current as well. All right, and as we can see, the deploy worked out just fine. We can head over to our bit project and we'll see that that also is now working as we expected. You may be wondering why in our migration, the friends that we created locally do not deploy as part of a migration in this step. And the reason is because we didn't actually create these friends through the console. We created them through interacting with our application. And so this is a really critical difference, is that everything that I have done in the console itself will be tracked in metadata. But anything where I'm manipulating the database by hand or through the API, those are not migrations and will not be synced. So this idea of using the migrations for syncing data over is very brittle. It's not actually a recommended process, but it's something that works for some quick and dirty uploading of content. From here on out, we'll need to look at creating scripts to actually synchronize our databases from local to production. This is a big problem space that a lot of people are working on right now, but it's something that we just need to bear in mind. This is not actually something that you'd want to do for data syncing between two platforms. What we want to do now, though, is actually go ahead and test to see if our logic and behavior work for our production environment. So we're going to attempt to do a login here, or a sign up actually. We'll switch to sign up, and I'm going to go ahead and use my own little moniker here, and I'm going to go ahead and use the 123 password. I'll hit sign up, and we'll see if we get transitioned over to our library as expected. So we can see that there's, actually it did work, it was just a bit of a delay. Okay, so you can see now that we have an interface. This interface is probably new to you at this point because I've added some code since we were working on this last. We can see now that if we go into orders, we can actually have access to some content here and be able to start looking at toppings. Okay, before I start making you wonder what is going on here, I'm going to cut this video here and we're going to talk about our current status of this project in the next video, and we're going to actually talk about ordering pizzas in the next step. So we'll see you in the next video, and I hope you're staying tuned and following along, and we'll see you then. Bye.